Good morning, everybody. Welcome to PER2202 Week 4 online lecture. Again, sorry for this being a day late. I was somewhat caught up with a sick 9-year-old yesterday, so apologies for that. Today we're going through and looking at coaching pathways. Last week we started with our fundamentals. Then we're going to have a look at coaching pathways before we get on to the other stages of LTAD. So we'll go straight into it now today. And what we're hoping to achieve, let's just make sure, yep, here we go. So we're off and running today. Okay, so if we have a look at high performance coaching, so it's not surprising that pathways and development ways that we've discussed or mentioned with athletes, that there's a similar or corresponding type development model for the coach as well. The idea is, though, that we need to understand that coaching at the elite level is a dynamic, complex and challenging vocation, as we see with every week with NRL, AFL, Olympics. There's always issues over coaches and who is and who isn't. But it's good to know for those who wish to profess into coaching, what sort of pathways have been established. So when we look at it, and the complex and social dynamic activity of coaching can be looked at in a number of patterns. First of all, there's the type of tasks that are undertaken by the coach. More important these days is the relationship the coach has with people other than both their other staff, the athletes that they work. In Sydney with the NRL, there's been a lot of discussions this year over Jason Taylor and Robbie Farah at the West Tigers, whether or not, without being inside and understanding what the inner workings are going on there, there's obviously a relationship issue between those two people. At this stage, it looks like Jason Taylor is on top of that debate, but time things. But also, and with that, you want to look at the situation and context in which they operate. Now, if we look at the way we develop athletes compared to how we develop coaches, again, they both start here. This little graph is a development to the basic athleticism, speed, agility, quickness, balance, coordination here, experience and understanding a range of movement skills and delivered to athletes, progresses up in refinement, enhancing the knowledge of skills and how to develop them, understanding of the growth patterns that are associated in this group of train to train, working training programs, peaking and understanding the fitness and skills training programs, about preparation, and before they come up here into their head coach of a team of experts. So they quite often refer to it, doesn't matter what sport it is, there seldom is a coach or one-man show. They usually have a broad range of people that they need to, that they do work with. So if we have a look at this way, where they go and start with, look at the base model of high performance coach development is diversified sport participation. In other words, they're playing many different sports in many different teams, so it provides a roundness or a wellness of uptaking their skills and developments. Generally, coaches will have a competitive sport participation, and similar to our train to train or learn to train and train to train, look at specialising in a particular sport during this stage. Generally speaking, a lot of coaches have gone through into this highly competitive sport area in their late teens, early 20s, but perhaps they got involvement in other sports. They move into that highly competitive sport participation, and probably at this point starting getting the introduction into coaching. So quite often a lot of teams will hand over the teaching and learning to players, senior players, playing groups, and those who have a certain ability as a leadership role, to give them that so the players are used to players taking those roles. And also it's a good way to highlight those with coaching potentials, because quite often players may not necessarily be the outstanding player, but may develop into a very solid coach through their basic understanding of what's going on. And this is when they start to get that early participation. Sometimes they'll also move into development programs with young squads, whether it be their under 16s, under 18s, under 20s. And in fact, if you go through particularly the NRL with their Holden Cup, quite often you'll find a lot of past players are working and coaching in that. And then they generally head into the high performance coach. Usually it's above the age of 30. So primarily, generally speaking, they're at retirement age from playing and they move into that coaching role. There has been a few examples. Nathan Brown is one where they enter it earlier. He's had some issues, predominantly in the initial stage at St George before going to England. And some of that was saying he was possibly too young, but we'll wait and see on that. Now, the three aspects that we need to look at development is their experience in sport participation. Then you look at their coaching experience and formal education. So we like to develop all of these. So why is it essential for them to have a sport experience? And one of the reasons for that is that sport experience gives them an opportunity to have an understanding of the technical and tactical requirements for the sport in a first-hand basis. And if we go here to this, they develop some of their initial concepts of coaching from the way they're coached. Quite often, if they have a strong relationship with the coach, they'll mimic that coach in their way. It's quite interesting if you look around at the NRL, the number of coaches who are now coaching at various clubs in first grade have worked under other coaches, Craig Bellamy, Wayne Bennett in particular, a couple of coaches who assistant coaches have now progressed into that development. So a lot of it is in those early stages developing, and they can start that from their playing days. Other benefits of play include the knowledge, skills, rules, strategies, understanding culture of the sport, understanding the players operate. Now, continued association with the sport is one of the biggest reasons that players move into that coaching, because once you retire from coaching, if you're in your early 30s, you've got another 50, 60 years of your life. And if the previous 15 years have been solely defined by that sport to then end playing, leaves this big gap, big emptiness within the players. And they need to understand, well, where do I go through from now? So for a lot of them, it is in that association through coaching. Steve Folkes is one. He actually went in as strength and conditioning before going on to coaching, and then back into a defence when he moved from the Bulldogs to St George for a period of time. So it helps them to maintain that connection and that how they see them being defined by their sport. So it maintains this identity. Quite often they realise that, perhaps playing sport or their career is not developing the way it wanted to, or perhaps for various reasons they could understand it, perhaps they've been with injuries and all that. So they'll look to move into the coaching. If they've had strong relationships with previous coaches, they can see that as an automatic progression. And usually they have taken a leadership role around the playing group over their playing years. Now, if we look at further for that progression, we've spoken about the 10,000 hours of deliberate practice. So if you sit there and think they go 10,000 hours, okay, but if you consider that 15 years they've been playing that sport, so they've been experiencing and accumulating those hours as they actually play in the tactics, the knowledge and the understanding. Now, of course, not all players can become coaches. Some are very good, some are not good. And so usually at this stage, that's when it's identified. Their understanding of what's going on will lead them into the coaching pathway. Whereas others who do not show a very clear understanding, but merely are very good at doing what they're told, they're less likely to progress into that coaching. But even with this, that if we have a look down here, that if we look at 10-year or 10,000 hours, that prior to moving to that high performance position, that they've got 10 years coaching behind them before they moved into that. So even in this instance, they've probably got 20, 30 years in that sport experiencing before they get that high performance job. One of the more ironics is that in North America that they're tertiary educated. So, and even postgrad studies. So you're looking at bachelor and master's degrees. If you look at, and it's not just in America, across Europe, Asia, South Africa, and in Australia. So we're looking not just accredited coaching courses, but now we're looking at bachelor courses, where you get a degree in sports coaching, it can be strength and conditioning coaching, a master's, and all the rest. And so more and more now, that merely having a level 3 coaching is one thing if you don't have a degree to sort of back it up. Not in all cases does it need to be a sports coaching degree. It can be a master's in management, because as most people will understand, that managing, coaching a team is just as much about managing the personalities, managing the players, managing all the staff, all the stakeholders that are invested. So, but formal education is looking more and more to be a prerequisite rather than just a nice to. Now, in groups, identify a high performance coach, identify their resume. So this is something more for our online, for our face-to-face, but on the online, so I want you to think most of you will have a particular coach that you admire or that you look up to, whether it be in a sport that you actually follow or just as a side note. So what I'd really like you guys to do now is to grab a coach. Just a coach can be in the sport, it can be with the team that you're playing with, or it can be a totally separate field somewhere else. Whether you look at Alex Ferguson or Wayne Bennett, or a swimming coach, Laurie Lawrence, and those sorts of things. So just have a look at some coach around and just find out about their resume, who they are, where they came from, their experience, their education, their qualifications. It shouldn't be too hard with the beauty of the internet, but have a look at it and just use it to highlight that coach and how that coach progressed to be in the position where they are today. Okay, guys. Now, if I remember rightly, your first assessment for athletic development is due this Sunday night. So keep working on that lit review, upload it on a Turnitin at your earliest convenience. You can continue to edit and re-edit your submission up until the due time. Okay, you should get reports now. I've made sure that that's set up. In one of our other subjects, there was a delay in getting that through. So it should be up there today. So have a look at that. Do this. This task that I've set for you to actually identify a coach and put their resume together, both business, education, playing, and their experience. Because that's the best way. If you look at the top coaches, see what they've done, and if you want to become a top coach, then usually let's mimic their pathway as much as we can. All right, guys, I look forward to reading your lit reviews. Rachel, it's good to see that the women's basketball is still doing extremely well. So I expect to see those medals. Okay. I'm not going to say you fail if you don't get one, but let's just say, all right. All the best, guys, and we'll talk next week. Once again, sorry that it's up a day late, but have a check, have a look, and send us an email with your coach that you've summarized for me. That's a good idea, yeah. Email me through the resume of your coach that you've selected. All right, until next week, guys, all the best, and we'll see you in cyberspace.